Because right now, we have 17 U.S. service members who have been killed, but the new reporting is that nearly 100, or was it 100 service members have been injured in the past 2 weeks. And we're just now learning about it today because reporters are telling us that, not the government. That's a problem.
I believe the president when he says that they're going to strike them now 10 times harder than they could have otherwise. I believe that he means business. He always has. But when you take American blood like this, there's really no other response.
And we all need to understand that war rarely goes according to anybody's plan. War is dangerous.
But the president himself had promised no more forever wars. And I think a lot of people looked at that, and that may be reflected in those numbers.
We didn't go in with a plan. We shouldn't have gone in. And going in without a plan means you don't really have a plan to get out.
My answer would be predicated on whether we've taken out their nuclear capability. And if we have, and I don't know what the truth is, but if we have, then I would say it's worth it.
It means that this war is going to go on, which I think is unfortunate. It means we have a real task on our hand to either get a deal in place that's better than Obama's deal or obliterate the Iranian regime once and for all. And I would hope that we can all be united in that.
Guys, last night on Abby Phillips' show, MAGA pundits were completely annihilated when they tried to defend Trump over the recent strikes on Iran. The progressive journalists fact-checked these MAGA advocates so hard they were cornered into complete silence. Guys, it's hilarious to see that this orange man in the Oval Office is doing exactly the opposite of what he promised during the election campaign. No wars. Now I'm going to play some clips from the show. I'll share my opinion as we go.
New U.S. military strikes in Iran after Donald Trump vowed strong retaliation for 3 U.S. service members killed over the weekend. The Pentagon has identified 2 of the soldiers as 25-year-old First Lieutenant Tyler James Feehan of Hawaii and Georgia and 19-year-old Private Isabella Gonzalez of Carrollton, Texas. Both were killed in an Iranian attack on a military base in Jordan that left 1 other U.S. service member missing. A 3rd U.S. soldier was killed in northern Iraq during a controlled detonation of an Iranian drone. The deaths bring the number of U.S. service members who have died in the nearly 5-month war to 17. In a Truth Social post, President Trump says Iran will pay many times over for each American soldier killed. But as the conflict threatens to spiral out of control once again, Trump's narrative of U.S. invulnerabilities is once again being called into question. Here's Fox News' Maria Bartiromo contending with that yesterday.
I don't understand how it's possible that Iran has the capabilities to fight this way and continue to try to lash out at Gulf countries and U.S. military bases, because the U.S. has obliterated Iran's military, and the president continues to reiterate that.
Now, as far as the public goes and how they feel about this war, it's pretty clear. A new Washington Post Ipsos poll finds that 68% of Americans believe the war in Iran was not worth fighting, compared to just 28% who were saying it was. That negative 40-point split is worse than both the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan, according to Washington Post ABC News polling. Elizabeth, I want to start with you. You have Maria Bartiromo, who is very friendly towards Donald Trump, contending with this idea that at one point in this war, people were told, look, we obliterated their Navy. We took out most of their military capabilities. And yet you're seeing service members die, and you're seeing them being able to lash out at places like Jordan in the region. How do you respond?
Look, I think first and foremost, we have to say that all of us here agree that this loss is horrific, right? U.S. loss like this is awful. We all mourn these lives. We all know that they're doing the impossible. They're signing up for something none of us could probably fathom. I know it's hard enough for me to sit here with you all compared to, what they sign up to do. These are American heroes. And I think we're all sitting here wondering what this means moving forward. I believe the president when he says that they're going to strike them now 10 times harder than they could have otherwise. I believe that he means business. He always has. But when you take American blood like this, there's really no other response. I think the entire country agrees with Maria. Maria's a friend. I know that when she looks at this, she wants to know that Iran is actually obliterated in the way that they can never react like this ever again. They never have this capability. But for them, it doesn't mean that their Navy wasn't, for a fact, obliterated. It means they're using every last missile that they have to try and, bring up American pain. That's what they do. It does not mean we're not stronger than them. It doesn't mean we shouldn't celebrate American victories. It means that this war is going to go on, which I think is unfortunate. It means we have a real task on our hand to either get a deal in place that's better than Obama's deal or obliterate the Iranian regime once and for all. And I would hope that we can all be united in that.
Do you think that we're in a scenario where we're in a quagmire now, where we can't find a solution and it's just tit for tat, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth?
Well, no, I think when you have a conflict like this that's gone on for 47 years, you know the solution. The solution is to obliterate a regime that wants the death of all American lives. That's the only solution, or a deal that's put in place that makes sure that future American generations never have to worry about a nuclear Iran. You brought up that polling. I don't know if that's fair to compare conflicts, considering Americans have a bad taste in their mouth. Maybe, they should, considering we had a 20-year conflict that we were in. They don't want to see that happen again. I'm more curious to see what polling looks like after this conflict is behind us, knowing that it was taken care of in a much less time, hopefully a stronger fashion, and again, made sure that Americans were safe for generations to come.
Guys, the United States has now been carrying out military strikes continuously, and it makes me sick to say that the peace negotiations are over and we don't know what Trump's exit strategy is. Apparently, this egotistical clown in power has no strategy at all. Let me remind you guys that Congress did not approve this war, and a vast majority of Americans are also against it. It makes me sad that many American soldiers have been injured so far. A few have even lost their lives because of Iranian strikes on U.S. bases in the Gulf. The surprising part is that we don't know when this Trump madness will end because he doesn't have the wisdom to deal with Iran as previous US presidents did. Let's be real here. A lot of Americans think that Trump doesn't give a damn about putting US soldiers at risk in this self-created war. He just likes watching footage of the bombings in the morning. It's not his money. It's not his family dying over there in the Gulf. He doesn't care about a single soldier's life. And that's it. That's the reality.
Christine, I do want to ask you about this because one of the things you're pointing to, comparing it to other wars, and I think one of the things that Americans learned as they watched these wars go on and on and on and on is that they didn't feel in the end that they were worth it. They were worth the lives of those soldiers, the pain of the families, and the ultimate result. I mean, the Taliban is now in charge of Afghanistan.
After 20 years.
After 20 years. So their taste for war is low. But the president himself had promised no more forever wars. And I think a lot of people looked at that, and that may be reflected in those numbers. How do you see it, Christine?
An interesting fact in these polls, the support for this war has plummeted very quickly, as opposed to Iraq and Afghanistan, where it took much longer for people to lose faith and lose support in the war. I think people really see that the president went in without a clear plan. When he did then articulate a plan, one thing was regime change. We now have a leader who is more committed to killing Americans than the prior supreme leader. Two, it was to, obliterate their nuclear capability, which we had said we had done, but then didn't do, and to, obliterate their military capacity, which clearly we haven't done if soldiers are continuing to die at the hands of the Iranians. I think people are so quickly dissatisfied because they know we didn't go in with a plan. We shouldn't have gone in. And going in without a plan means you don't really have a plan to get out. And in addition to the impacts you articulated, it's also having an impact on the American economy, with gas being back up to $4 and more in some places, and diesel being back to $5. So people are feeling hit, and Americans are willing to sacrifice for the good of the country and the good of the world. And no one wants Iran to have a nuclear weapon, but their sacrifices, I think the polls show, they feel are for naught because there really isn't a plan. And every time the president says we've had a victory, it turns out not to be true.
Steve, when you look at this, how much of what you see in the polling and just the feeling of Americans that this isn't worth it has to do with the economy, has to do with the direct effects to their lives?
Nobody likes paying $4 a gallon for gasoline. And remember, we had the lowest gasoline prices in 50 years back in January and February. So clearly that's part of this. And food prices, too, have been affected. If you had asked me that question, that poll question that Americans were asked, my answer would be predicated on whether we've taken out their nuclear capability. And if we have, and I don't know what the truth is, but if we have, then I would say it's worth it. But if we haven't, then it's hard to see what we've achieved here. So I think it's sort of premature to judge this yet because, look, the impact of taking out their nuclear capability is massive for civilization.
Keith, when you look at this, is it possible that all of this in the end will actually end up hurting Iran because other nations are being attacked by them that's sort of in the region, and they're looking at other ways to try and get oil to people without going through the Strait? So ultimately, in I don't know how many years' time, do you see this as being an ultimate downfall, if you will, for Iran and its hold
Well, I mean,
on
it's
the
already
region.
hurting Iran, but it's hurting the United States too, and that's the problem. I mean, you can't bomb somebody for months and months and expect it to have no impact on them. It did have an impact on Iran, but it didn't have the desired impact. President Trump said he wanted to have regime change, or he wanted to have unconditional surrender. He was going to help the people of Iran. He was going to liberate their nuclear program, which he already said he did last year, which he didn't. And we're going to create a better deal. It was better than Obama's deal, and they created a ceasefire agreement. It was worse than Obama's deal and paid him off. And so the American people are understandably frustrated because we've been through this before. We've seen this movie before. We saw it in Iraq. We saw it in Afghanistan. And we don't want to see it again. And the president isn't being transparent. So I agree with Stephen about the idea that we need the president and the administration to be transparent, because right now we have 17 U.S. service members who have been killed. But the new reporting is that nearly 100, or was it 100 service members have been injured in the past 2 weeks. And we're just now learning about it today because reporters are telling us that, not the government. That's a problem.
Guys, we all remember that one of Trump's biggest campaign promises was that America would stop getting involved in endless wars. He repeatedly argued that Washington had spent too much money overseas while everyday Americans struggle at home. Ironically, this orange man has gone further than previous presidents and has completely failed to live up to those promises. And honestly, guys, households across America are now facing the consequences of Trump's foolish actions. Rising inflation and higher gas prices, groceries, healthcare, and housing have made it almost impossible for Americans to manage their budgets. And you know what, guys? This unnecessary war has cost billions of taxpayer dollars. Our soldiers are losing their lives. Ordinary Americans are struggling with the rising cost of living. And honestly, this brainless president and his cronies do not give a damn about it. Despite seeing all that, the dumb MAGA pundits still support Trump's idiotic policies just to embarrass themselves.
When you think about this number, there was reporting about the number of people that have been injured. And the response from the Trump administration was, well, we can't tell people about the injuries because it actually helps Iran. They know then that they're doing this damage. But service members have been killed, and you certainly have to tell the American public about those. What do you think about that response? What advice would you give the president?
Well, I think certainly when you have soldiers that have been killed in action, the public needs to know that. Now, regarding damage and other assessments following an attack from Iran, the strategic value of immediate reporting versus delayed reporting, I would give them some latitude on that. I'm not really in a position to judge them on it because I don't know what the truth is regarding the strategy of the bases that have been targeted. So I'll just leave that at that. But I think anytime you have soldiers killed, you got to tell the public, and we all need to mourn for them, and we all need to understand that war rarely goes according to anybody's plan. War is dangerous, and these soldiers who sign up to fight for the United States sign up to do some of the bravest and most heroic things any of us could imagine, and sometimes that leads to loss of life, and we should just remember that they are heroes, and they're fighting for the United States, and they're fighting for an outcome. The outcome is to make us safer. We would be safer if Iran is totally degraded from ever having a nuclear weapon. The world will be safer if they are no longer capable of being the world's largest sponsor of terrorism. We will be safer if their ability to destabilize the Middle East as a whole goes away. And those are ultimately the outcomes. But I agree with Stephen. The nuclear piece was always the number one issue. And ultimately, that's how this has to end. We have stopped Iran from being able to get a nuclear weapon. I think they've been dramatically set back from the activities of last summer and these activities. But that's ultimately the goal, number one goal. There are other goals. But the number one issue is nuclear weapons. They cannot have them, and we cannot leave until we can assure the American people they will never get them.
That's it for today, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'll see you in the next video.